Good evening, folks. Welcome back. This is your half-hour call. Half hour, please. Half hour.
Hi, everyone. I'm Curt Columbus, Artistic Director at Trinity Repertory Company. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you to our friends at Washington Trust. Washington Trust are our sponsors for your half-hour call, and we have a very special show tonight. I have three dear friends here with me. The show is entitled Inspired Acts, and you'll learn a little bit more about that as we go along. First, Sergio Gonzalez, thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you, Curt. Pleasure to be here.
John Harpootian, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, my friend. Yep, happy to be here.
Jill Luciano, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Curt.
So I purposely just said folks' names because I'm going to let y'all introduce yourselves. Let us know what it is that you do professionally and how you're connected with Trinity Rep. We'll start with the beautiful and talented Jill Luciano.
Thank you, beautiful and talented Curt Columbus.
You're sweet.
It's great to be here with you and with John and with Sergio. Hey, everyone, I'm Jill from Southwest Airlines. I have the great privilege of working on our community outreach team. Been doing this for about 8 years, and it was around 8 years ago that I was introduced to Trinity Rep for the first time. So no coincidence there. They were one of my first partners actually in the community portfolio that I manage, and Providence means so much to Southwest Airlines, and there's no question that Trinity means so much to Providence as well. So it was that meeting, Curt, for the first time. It was actually through one of the other partners of Southwest, which is Theater Forward. Trinity is one of the affiliate theaters of Theater Forward. And we met Curt, and then we realized there was a bigger Southwest Airlines connection in the great Nate Watson, who's been one of our valued and talented and wonderful flight attendants for decades. Yeah. And we can't do it without him. And so realizing that all of the stars were aligning between Nate and how wonderful it was to meet Curt and to learn about the organization and how much they're embedded in the Providence community, it's just, it was just wonderful for us to have been able to start our partnership at that point.
Jill, you and I met at a board meeting for Theater Forward, and I still remember I was being my usual irreverent self, and you came up to me afterwards and said, I need to know you because you're salty or something like that. And then we realized the connection because you used to work for Southwest Airlines, and I said, oh, my husband's a flight attendant for Southwest. So it was meant to be. We've been friends ever since. I feel really, really fortunate that you're in our life and that you bring so much to TRC. So thank you.
You bring so much to us. Thank you.
Well, and speaking of bringing a lot to Trinity Rep, John Harpootian, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Curt, and it's great to be here on the show with you and Sergio and Jill. This is a pleasure. I didn't know you were doing a show, but I'm glad you're doing it. This is absolutely fabulous. So thank you for having me on. So as I like to say, I'm an attorney by day, but I've been kicking around Trinity Rep for a very, very long time. Actually, Jen asked me to think about shows that I could remember over the years. So she sent me the list of the shows, and I actually had a favorite show from every show back to 1974. So that tells you how long I've been kicking around the theater.
John, you were one of the first people that I met in Providence, Rhode Island. You and your gorgeous wife, Yvette, welcomed us. And you know, there's a way in which a lot of the history at Trinity Rep is passed down through people. And you started on the board in what year?
Well, actually on the board in 1990, but as a volunteer as early as the 1970s, actually.
Right.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
So you've actually got history all through all six artistic directors.
Oh yes, yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, when I was growing up, whenever my parents were subscribers. So whenever Adrian would program something that was at least somewhat age appropriate, and even when it wasn't, my parents would bring my sister and I to the theater, and that's how I got hooked. Yeah, that was the beginnings.
It's amazing. Your longevity, your history is our history, and we're so fortunate to have you. So thank you for being here. My friend Sergio Gonzalez, I'm going to let you introduce yourself as well.
Thank you, Curt. It's a real pleasure to be here with John and Jill and you tonight, and everyone listening. It's my arrival in Providence is more recent than some of you, but I have the privilege and honor of being on the board of Trinity Rep, and we moved to Providence. It's now almost 3.5 years ago. From Miami, which is my hometown. And I'll talk a little bit about that and my relationship to the theater early on. But so when I arrived, I heard from Trinity Rep, I'm a senior vice president for advancement at Brown University. And what that means, most folks don't know what advancement is, but basically I'm in charge of all fundraising for the university and the team that does that, as well as alumni relations. We have a very significant and treasured partnership, we Brown, with Trinity Rep, particularly through our MFA program, which Curt, you're the leader of, and our wonderful and talented students that perform and learn so much through the relationship that we have with Trinity Rep. So I treasure that part of it. That's very significant to me. And we've just, my wife Patricia and I have just really enjoyed our getting to know you, Curt, and everyone, and all the actors, but also just the terrific performances.
Well, and Sergio, you came on the board partially through the institutional relationship. Mm-hmm. But I remember one of our first conversations, you talking about that you have kind of a lifelong connection to the theater, right?
Yeah, I did. And, again, I was going to talk a little bit more about that. I started my relationship to theater started, my family's Cuban. I'm Cuban American. So my first relationship with theater was in Miami through Spanish theater, and smaller theaters, and my family attending those. So it's been a lifelong journey from there. And most recently, before leaving Miami, I was a board member of the Arts Center, which is the Performing Arts Center in Miami, and really treasured that and enjoyed that. But so having arrived in Providence, and Trinity, not only the performances, we'll talk about that, but Trinity's history and being part of the history of Providence, for me, that's very special as well. So being part of Trinity is just I treasure it. So.
I love that. I love that all three of you bring a love of the theater. I know this from our conversations that you're ardent theater goers, and so what we've done is I've asked my three friends to talk about some of their favorite shows over the years. I've pulled clips. We're going to look at those, but. Each of you are involved with philanthropy in a slightly different way. And I think some people who are watching are going to ask the question, what do you mean by philanthropy? Was it just writing a check? And I don't think of it that way, and I don't think any of you think of it that way. So I'd just love to get some individual thoughts about what does it mean to be a philanthropist, because all three of you are.
I'm happy to start and tackle that. I always think about philanthropy in a much broader way. You mentioned writing a check, and that's certainly, financial support is certainly the first thing that a lot of folks think about. But I think about it in a much broader way. I think about it in the form of engagement and really a mutuality. Which is a mutuality of joy, of pleasure, of benefit in that association between an individual and a cause, or in this case, an organization that they deeply care about. And that philanthropy doesn't come only by writing the check, but also by being an ambassador, by providing support to folks who are involved with the organization, by getting others to help, and bring their support to the organization and engaging them. And I always say something I always say about philanthropy, and I go back to the joy of it, is, I tell folks when they ask whether, in a room, I'll always ask, how many of you are philanthropists? And most people don't think of themselves that way. But then I say, how many of you actually give, philanthropically to a cause? And then you get most people to raise their hand. And then I ask them, how do you feel when you actually do that? And most folks will reflect at that point, and they find a joy in doing that. And that's why I say to folks, be happy, bring others along to support causes that you care about, because you're asking them to do something that's going to really enhance their life and make it and have them a joy. And, that's how I think about Trinity, and the things that I know everyone on this call really feels great about, and bringing others to the table and supporting you and supporting our actors and the performances in different ways.
It's really, Sergio, the thing that you're drawing attention to, and again, each of you does this so well, is connect people to networks, right? That more than financial support is important, but there's the way that people can connect to other people to expand that network, right? I met so many people with John Harpootian when I moved here, because I was new and I needed someone to make that connection. And John, I think of people like Charles Sullivan, the great Charles Sullivan, who was an incredible fundraiser, but mostly because he just knew everyone, right?
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, that's, and I'm glad you brought up Charles, because he was just a wonderful ambassador for not only Trinity, but the entire community. And that's it cuts to your thought about the public square, Curt. I mean, this is what we do at Trinity, and you've done it so well since you've been here. As I've always said about you, you are the greatest collaborator I've ever met, and it's absolutely true that when you talk about the joy of philanthropy, it's what it is that whatever you give is given back to you in so much more. When I think about the aspects of philanthropy as it means to me with respect to Trinity Rep, there's no question that the greatest thing that I get back out of the things that I do for the theater is to see the accomplishments of all of our team members and everybody in the company. So it's not just the actors, it's not just the directors, it's not just the directors and the production people. It's all of our team that makes Trinity Rep what it is. And so when you're a volunteer and someone has success on our staff, that little tiny bit of help that you gave to any one of these folks is what gives me great pleasure. And obviously, when it comes to you or Oscar or Dick Jenkins, the whole public knows about that, and it's great. Everything that you do that's an achievement. You look at your credits and you say, well, but for this little tiny bit of philanthropy that I did, my contribution to this is what created all this opportunity for these tremendous artists to do their work. And that's what's so rewarding, and that people sometimes don't focus on, because as Sergio said, it's not just about writing the check. The checks are important. The checks are very important, and we don't want to lose focus on any of that. But it's what does it do? And the committee work and the board work, all of those things that we all do to help in this process. And it really makes an incredible difference, not just to the product that gets on the stage, but also in the development of all of our staff, from the people on the stage, from backstage to in our office.
John, this is, I want to give a big shout out to my friend, Jill Luciano, because one of the things, you have corporate partners from other locations. They don't know Rhode Island. They don't know the Rhode Island community. They're not connected to Brown. we've had those partners. We have those partners. They're fantastic. But Jill showed up and she met everybody on staff. You don't just meet the people who are stars on the stage. You know all of my staff. You know all of the development staff. You know the production people. I mean, I just can't even imagine that someone from Southwest Airlines would show up and get to know everyone in the way that you do. But it seems to me that that's actually the work of the philanthropist on some level, right?
I think that I work on the community outreach team for a reason. Community is the key word. And that is something that I think is embedded into everything that John and Sergio and Curt, you're saying. You know, we're an airline, of course. We, you know, get people from point A to point B. We say we connect people with what's important in their lives. But your question of philanthropy, well, what's important to someone personally? Yeah. And I think everyone here would agree that, you know, being able to support an organization like Trinity Rep, to be able to support arts organizations in general, to be able to recognize that it's not necessarily the stars, the actors, you know, that are the only thing there to appreciate and to support. It's an entire unit. It's an entire operation. And a lot of these folks you never get to see. Tom Parrish and I talk about the comparison between arts and theater, theater and airline all the time. It's like, while you'll see the pilot or you'll see Nate Watson, your flight attendant, those are the people that you see, but then there's, you know, thousands of other people that made sure that that flight is going to get you from point A to point B. And then there's people like me that are on the ground in the communities, being able to identify which organizations are like-minded, which ones, you know, are great neighbors, which ones, you know, appreciate accessibility and people and working as a team. And it's just finding all of those factors. And there's so many organizations to support. And I think that the commonality tonight is that we all feel the same about Trinity, which is because it brings so much more to us than it could ever, you know, than we could ever give to it.
Well, so with that, because I could talk to all three of you all night, and this is my favorite kind of conversation. But I do want to show these clips from your favorite shows. And each of you had a longish list, but John Harpootian's was the longest. And you also went back the furthest. And I have some early video. So we're going to play a clip from a show from 2008. Which is actually a show that I wrote called Paris by Night. And John put it on his favorites list. And I had the opportunity to revisit it and went, wow, I really loved this show. You get to see Joe Wilson Jr. and James Royce Edwards. And Peter, let's play the clip and then we'll talk about it for Paris by Night.
Oh, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I've only ever been this high in a plane, and you couldn't see nothing from there.
I swore that I would never come up here. And here I am.
Why'd you do that?
First, it's a tourist trap. And I hate being a tourist. Second, and I can't believe I'm about to admit this, I'm terrified of high places. Not regular buildings, just places like the top of the ever-loving Eiffel Tower. Terrified, really amazingly terrified, oh God.
And you came up here anyway?
Like I said, kid, you could charm the birds from the trees. And you really wanted to come up here? So, oh God!
I only wanted to see what it was like. There's nothing to be scared of anyway.
I always feel like I'm going to fall when I'm someplace that's high.
Maybe falling isn't always a bad thing.
What is that supposed to mean?
Nothing.
Oh, man.
Hold on to my arm. I won't let you fall. Come on, one step at a time. Good, that's good. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Well, I'm sorry, that was terrible. I won't let go, I promise. I got you. You're doing great.
Oh, man. Oh.
Look, right here. All right. Just take a deep breath. Is that any better?
Yes. It is beautiful. The only way to really see this city is when it turns its lights on. Paris by night.
It's like when the lights come on, you can see what's been there all along, but you're really seeing it for the first time. Sam, thanks for taking such good care of me. Can't remember when anybody's been this good to me in my entire life.
Don't feel like you need to pay me back or anything. I'm having a good time too.
Sam, I gotta ask one more thing from you.
What is it?
Would you put one of your roses on my chest?
Are you sure? Tattoos are, well, they're forever.
Yeah. One just like yours, so I'll never forget the last 2 days. For you.
And roses are only for a certain kind of guy.
I have to leave tomorrow, Sam. I have to. And I don't think I'm coming back.
Right. I guess I was forgetting that part. Let's go.
So it's a scene about tattoos.
That's a great memory, Curt. It's
Thanks. It's a great production. Scenery by Eugene Lee in the Dowling Theater. Nobody else could make the Eiffel Tower happen in the Dowling Theater with a couple of strings of lights.
Yeah.
It was a pretty incredible scenery. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a brilliant show, Curt, and you really captured the whole feeling of everything right there. I mean, it's just
Thanks.
that's really well done, and and here's the thing, you wrote the show, and you and I discussed it, and you said this, I want to program this for this season, and I said, look, you shared it with me, that you shared the play with me right away.
The interracial love story set in movie Paris.
No, I mean it's and I said you have to do it. It's really well done and good. It was a beautiful story then, and you put it against the 2020 backdrop, and it's even more poignant now.
Yeah. I thanks. I mean, one of the opportunities that we have at Trinity Rep, because we have the kind of support that we have, is that we get to do new work, right? I wanted to, of your list, I wanted to include that because it was a new play. And so the support for it was really integral at the moment that it happened. So yeah, so it's thank you for taking us down that particular memory lane. And now I'm also going to remind anyone who's watching that if you have questions for my guests, please feel free to put them into the Facebook Live chat, and we will get them. We'll answer your questions as they come in. But now I want to show a clip from Jill Luciano's list, which would be Little Shop of Horrors. And why did you put Little Shop on your list?
It still comes to mind. It still comes to mind. I mean, if one of my best friends is listening right now, he's just gonna laugh because I'm about to make a comment about revivals. And revivals are just so hard to do. And I'm not a director, I'm not a producer. And what Tyler was able to do with a show that is, quite frankly, you know, I mean, it has such a following.
Yeah.
You know, it becomes a different version of itself, whether on a regional stage or off Broadway, you know, every few years.
Yeah.
And it's a show that you've seen before, but it's just so memorable for
Yeah.
whatever reason. And I'll just never get Rebecca out of my mind as Audrey. I just never will, and I don't want to.
Great. Well, all right, then we're going to kick it off with that. That's how we're going to kick it off. Peter, let's play the clip from Little Shop of Horrors. You're going to watch Becky Gibble, Jude Sandy, Stephen Berenson. Here we go.
Downtown, where the guys are drips. Downtown, where they rip your slips. Downtown, where relationships are no go. Down on Skid Row. Down on Skid Row. Down on Skid Row. Down on Skid Row.
Poor. All my life I've always been poor. I keep asking God what I'm for, and he tells me, gee, I'm not sure. Sweep that floor, kid, oh. I started life as an orphan, a child of the street, here on Skid Row. He took me in, gave me shelter, a bed, crust of bread, and a job. Treats me like dirt, calls me a slob, which I am. So I live downtown. That's the home address you live downtown. When your life's a mess, you live downtown. Where depression's just status quo. I constantly pray I'll get out of here. Please won't somebody say I'll get out of here. Someone give me my shot or I'll rot here. Show me how and I will, I'll get out of here. I'll start climbing uphill and get out of here. Someone tell me I still could get out of here. Someone tell Lady Luck that I'm stuck here.
She sure would be swell to get out of here. People gotta farewell and get out of here. I do heaven and earth to get out of Skid. I don't know what to get out of Skid, but a hell of a lot to get out of Skid. People tell me there's not a way out of Skid, but believe me, I'm gonna get out of Skid Row.
See, I will contend that what made that production so special, aside from Tyler's brilliant vision of it, was the acting company.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was one of those times where, you know, Jude Sandy and Becky Gibble and Stephen Berenson in those parts, as well as Stephen Thorne as the dentist. I mean, Orvin Scrivello, DDS. You know, the Janice Duclos, Tim Crow, Tavon Gamble, all of these incredible artists who are local artists, right? Making the show happen. And you can only get that at a regional theater that has the support, right, of a community of philanthropists. Sergio, were you going to add something? I thought I saw something.
No.
All right.
Listening to you.
Then I'm gonna move on to your pick, which was also on a couple of lists, which would be radio golf. Why'd you put radio golf on your list, Sergio?
You know, I had a number of them, but you know, you asked earlier about theater and what brings us to theater, and you know, sometimes it's the escapism of it all. Sometimes it's the profoundness of it all. Sometimes it's just the joy and the beauty of it all. And I think this one for me had it all, but most of all was that profoundness and it made me reflect. I mean, I was throughout the work, I kept reflecting on the profoundness of the issues and wanting to dig deeper into some of the the issues that and the conversations and the interplay, which was were very human, but also were very much about a community and the challenges of a community. So for me, it was I wanted more. I left wanting more. I left wanting to have more conversation and thinking about some of the themes and the interactions, and I just enjoyed it profoundly.
It's interesting, of course, and we're actually going to do a show in a couple of weeks with Joe Wilson to talk about Radio Golf, because that's a show that came about because of an association that we have with a group called DARE, which is a housing advocacy group. And we had done some work with them in our America 2 project. And Joey and I both said, we need to do this play, great August Wilson play by the great August Wilson. But it was also that it was so much about housing and gentrification and all of these issues that really speak to Providence and Providence right now. So it's interesting that that's the thing that drew you to this particular production, because it was right in the genesis. So Peter, let's play that clip. Joe Wilson and the great Ricardo Pitts Wiley in Radio Golf.
You got green money. I could never turn my money green. But that's just the way it turned out. It could have turned out another way. You sure you're not a lawyer? I need a lawyer like you. You got a nice report.
What do you need a lawyer for? They got some good lawyers down at Hill House.
They had me charged with fraud. They tried to put me in jail.
Fraud, what did you do?
I didn't do nothing but walk the dog.
No, they weren't going to put you in jail for walking a dog. Why were they going to put you in jail for fraud?
Because Mr. Douglas died. Mr. Douglas was a blind man, lived downstairs from me. Had a dog named Cindy. When he died, Cindy didn't have nothing to do, so I used to let her lead me around so she would be happy. They tried to put me in jail for being a fake blind man. All I did was walk the dog. I tell you the truth, the sun was shining, so I did put on some sunglasses.
Did you solicit money from anybody?
Ooh, that's a $10 word with a $5 meaning. I ain't never asked nobody for nothing. The people just give me all the time. They've been giving me for a long time. I used to walk around and sing and songs, and the people like that. They take care of me. If I have my guitar, I sing one for you. But my guitar in the pawn shop. Been in the pawn shop since January 22nd, 1970.
I can't help you. You have to go down to Hill House.
Is you really gonna run for mayor? They ain't gonna let you be mayor.
Well, this is 1997. Things have changed. This is America. This is the land of opportunity. I can be mayor, I can be anything I want.
But you got to have the right quarter. America's a giant slot machine. You walk up and you put your coin in and it spits it back out. You look at your coin and think, well, maybe it's a Canadian coin. But it's the only one you got. If it don't work, you out of luck. You look at your coin and sure enough, it's an American quarter, but it don't spin for you. It's spin for everybody else, but don't spin for you. The machine spits it back out. Now, is the problem with the quarter or with the machine? Do you know? Anybody run for mayor ought to know that.
If it don't take all the quarters, you fix it. Anybody with common sense will agree to that. What they don't agree on is how to fix it. Some people say you gotta tear it down to fix it. Some people say you gotta build it up to fix it. Some people say they don't know how to fix it. Some people say they don't want to be bothered with fixing it. You mix them all in a pot and stir it up, and you've got America. That's what makes this country great.
I say get a new machine.
Sergio, just what you're talking about, right? I mean, the humor, and yet it's sort of this meditation on democracy, on responsibility. It's just incredible.
Incredible. Two different levels. Funny, moving, it just brings emotions out. And then at another level, you got, that balance between progress, tradition, history, the challenges of the African-American community in this country, issues that, as you mentioned at the outset, we're still dealing with. There's so much there. It was just incredibly done. And of course, incredible performances. And then the two perspectives, you know, and having come from, you know, a community where you have this, and I could relate to it personally because you have folks who have different perspectives coming from a different community about tradition and progress and moving forward and bringing wisdom to the table, and a younger generation that is moving on and looking at things different. There was just so much there. It was marvelous for me.
Yeah, I just want to credit the director, Jude Sandy, who was, of course, Seymour in the previous clip. Talk about someone who is a multiple threat artistically, can sing, can dance, a brilliant actor, a brilliant director. We're going to make him write a play here coming up because we've got to see what Jude has to say when he writes. But it's, you know, yeah, it's a tough play, but beautifully done. A great example of what you can do when you're a regional theater. All three of you put a little play on your list, just a tiny little play called The Prince of Providence. Now, we've shown clips of that play numerous times on this show, so I haven't pulled a clip. Why did that land on all three of your lists? I'm just wondering. Jill, you're not from Providence. Why did it land on your list?
Because it was the greatest ending of any play I've ever seen.
It was a pretty great ending, wasn't it?
The ending was so unexpected, so spot on, just shocking. And I couldn't, there was no other way to end it but the way it was done. And it was just so remarkably creative, and I'll never forget it.
I take that as a great compliment, particularly coming from someone who is not in this community and of this community. Mr. Harpootian knew Mayor Cianci really well, and it was also on your list, and you loved it as well.
Yeah. So Curt, you know, obviously, I've known Buddy Cianci since he first came on the scene.
Right.
We've known each other almost my entire life,
Right.
and there's not many people who've experienced as much with Buddy as I have, and you know, the play absolutely captured everything about Buddy, all of the great and all of the bad, and there's a lot of both. And I thought that it really captured Providence as well as Buddy Cianci as well, an incredible leader, and an unbelievable friend to Trinity Rep.
Yeah.
You know, the times that we were really on the edge, if it weren't for Buddy, there would be no Trinity Rep.
Well, Jill's referencing that ending, which of course references that, and it is the
Exactly.
complicated nature of philanthropy, right? Because his philanthropy kept the place around, and it's complicated. And Sergio, you put it on your list. Not a newcomer. I mean, not an outsider, not an old timer. So how come it landed on your list?
Well, just something else about the ending, which is spectacular, is, you know, how many folks in the community I heard from who had not seen it, but, you know, there was a buzz about the ending, but people weren't telling others how the ending went. Said, you got to go and see it. And well, that's something you all created, which is, you know, was terrific. And people are out there really, and I think I saw it maybe the first week, but I'd already heard from, I couldn't wait for that ending. I mean, you did what, you know, that was just terrific. But the other piece is, you know, I've been here a relatively short period of time, certainly relative to you all, but this is my city now. And, you know, this is a significant history, and I'd certainly read a lot and heard podcasts about Buddy Cianci, and for, you know, and everybody has a perspective on him, it seems like, and you all did a wonderful job of capturing Buddy, who I didn't know, but a historical figure, a very significant historical figure in this community. And it was just, you know, I'm a political junkie. I was in government and politics, so all this for me is of great interest, always at another level. So you know, kudos to everyone. It was just wonderful.
Well, and I have to give credit to the great George Brandt who came up with that ending, which was there right from the very first reading. And I remember the reading that we had, the first draft, and he had solved that ending. There was no way that you were going to come up with something that wasn't that brilliant and the play was going to be any good. And it brought tears to my eyes because it put the complexity of the thing out on full display, and put Trinity Rep's complex relationship in full display, which made me really proud because that's the kind of art that we like to make, you know. Is there, and Jill, I'm going to start with you on this one. Is there something about Trinity Rep that is distinct for you as someone who, you know, is part of the national fundraising landscape, and you go to see a lot of Broadway, and you've been very close to us in the 8 years that we've known you. Is there something that draws you to us?
You guys remind me a lot of Southwest in that community is more than a place. This is what we always say. We say community is more than a place. It's the heart of what brings us together. That is a lot of what we make our decisions based on, and how we figure out where we fit in on a national perspective and also locally. So when I say that, I mean it. And your neighbors, and there's a very important piece of the work every day that encapsulates the inclusivity. Everybody is included, not just as audience members, but as students going through the programs, as parents of children that may not have the same viewing experience as someone else. It's all of those programs that are so thought out. There's not anyone that is not included in what a season should look like, what programming should look like. It's all encompassing. And I find that to be so important, particularly now. And I don't see it stopping anytime soon. I only see it becoming bigger than life. And you're just wonderful neighbors to everybody in the community. And like I said, you're welcoming, and it's people first. And I think that says a lot.
Thank you. That's a wonderful reflection. Sergio, you're on the board. You've been a really important part of the development of the board over the last couple of years. I'll say this to everyone who's watching, and to my friends Jill and John. Sergio is one of those people who, in a board meeting, there's a lot of chatter, and then he'll say one thing and everyone goes, yeah, that. which is why I love having you on our board, Sergio. It's really true. But you've also just really become a big supporter of the work and the way that we work. And so I wondered if there's anything, again, a uniqueness, a distinctiveness that you see from your point.
Sure. And, you know, thank you for that comment. But really what I'm doing is really summarizing all the great ideas I'm hearing around the room. So there's no original thought in that. So I'm a good summarizer, I guess. You know, a couple of things come to mind, Curt. You know, first of all, it's the actors in the company. You know, seeing them perform, and every time you go to the theater, you see them in a different, you know, great quality work by the actors, and then every time you see them in a different way, if you will. And particularly for me, seeing the Brown students perform is very special. I mean, that's just very special because you're seeing very talented younger folks who are side by side with some incredibly talented actors, and you see them just kind of, you know, exploding, and just, it's just great. It's just terrific. The other thing I would say, and I can say this for my wife and myself, and I encourage everybody who's listening, who's gone to Trinity or hasn't, but may consider it. You know, every time we go and we comment about this, we leave with a diversity of emotions. We leave with different, you know, and I don't know whether it's always intentional on your part, but you always evoke, you know, great emotions, whether it's joy, whether it's reflection, whether it's just admiration for the great work, and you walk out of there with just a whole different emotion and feeling after seeing the performance. And you never know when you go in exactly how you're going to feel at the end of the evening. And I think you all do a wonderful job. Again, I think that there's some of that there's intentionality in it, but some of it is just because of the love that you and other actors have for the work you do. And it just evokes emotion and feelings. And you can see it. It's not us. You can just see it in folks' faces as they leave. So I hope everyone who's listening comes, and enjoys that and takes part in that.
Fantastic. Fantastic. John, you've been around since 1974. You've stuck around. Anything to add to what Jill and Sergio just so eloquently said?
Yeah, no, they really did summarize it perfectly, and it just the beauty of Trinity Rep is that we have an aesthetic that's unlike anyone else's, and it's it's a testament to what you've done since you've been here. You've not only honored all of the things that we've done in the past, but you've amplified on them, Curt, and that's the greatness of your work. I said earlier, I've never been around someone who's a greater collaborator than you are, and you not only collaborate with all of the people that you're working with today and you will work in the future, but you've collaborated with all of the things that Trinity Rep has done in the past, which is an extraordinary achievement to me. And I've said this before, to you privately, but I'll say it here publicly on this broadcast, is that as a volunteer, the crowning achievement that I think that I've had in my entire time with Trinity Rep is recruiting you to come here. And it's been a great fit. I know you're an incredible part of our community now, and almost from the very beginning. And I that's what I said earlier about that tiny little bit of pride that you have in being a volunteer, is that when you have a role in bringing a Curt Columbus to our community, that's very, very satisfying.
Well, you're very kind. Nate and I talk about this all the time, that one of the reasons we wanted to come was dinner with you and Yvette and Jack and Sarah McConnell, and that night that we all spent together here before the final decision was made, and I was like, these are people that I want to spend the rest of my life with, and here we are. 15 years later, literally 15 years later. So that's kind of remarkable how time flies. Thank you all for your time tonight. We talk about the volunteers who work with us, that we look for their time, talent, and treasure. These are three incredibly talented people. They are full of treasure, and this time has been wonderful. So thank you, each of you, for being here. It's just a gift. I want to make sure to wish everyone who's watching a happy and safe Thanksgiving. And just remind everyone that our Christmas Carol will be released on December 17th. You can sign up for that on Trinity Rep's website at trinityrep.com/carol. It's been very popular in the last couple of days. We're excited by the response that we're getting. And so please, if you get a chance, check out Christmas Carol. As John just said, we have a very singular aesthetic, and I think it's very much on display in this Christmas Carol. So you'll all see that. But thank you for being here. I'm going to play us off with a little bit of Paris by Night, which is a scene with the great Rachel Warren and a bunch of sexy young dancers. So Peter, if you will play us Yankee Rhythm from Paris by Night.
as can be. Yankee rhythm shocks into you, makes you shiver and sets you free. Yankee rhythm casts doubt in you, turns your light on, you breathe that Yankee rhythm.
Thank you, everyone. Great show tonight. As a reminder, we are off next week. There is no show next week. So we will see you back here 2 Thursdays from now for another 7:30 p.m. half hour. Thanks. Have a great night.